We are going to talk about how to help our children navigate this digital age. There is a lot of fear wrapped up in this. Do not be afraid. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes.
So spiritual warfare is waged with prayer, with faith, with truth, and obedience.
That's our first line of defense, especially when we get fearful. If your child had problems with time management before they got a phone, it's going to be amplified after they got a phone. The child who is conversant with speaking life will speak life on social media.
If we want our kids to turn out differently than the culture, we have to parent differently than the culture.
God loves their kids more than we do, and He wants this virtue in them even more than we do. If you have a child who's sneaky enough and wants to get around a parental control, they will get around it.
What's our posture towards our child's technology use? Do we believe that they are going to do a great job, or do we believe that we're just waiting for them to make a mistake?
They want to live up to the expectation. Anytime you can go back to the principle and instill the principles in your children's heart, that's going to go way farther than any rule is ever going to go.
So just thinking back, our first date,
Oh, yeah.
35 plus years ago.
That was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a good day.
What was technology like back then?
Did it exist? We did have a TV with 5 channels. You
had 5, I had 3. So you had a really nice TV. You had a really nice TV.
We did not have cable. We did have the wall phone, but we upgraded and got the 15-foot cord. So you could walk all around the kitchen.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet.
That was a big deal.
Except the one downstairs in our basement did not have that.
Oh,
so you either had to stand or sit on the steps.
Okay.
And that's where I made my first call to you.
Oh, it was down in the basement.
Down in the basement.
I didn't know that.
Why do you think I made the call down in the basement?
So that your little brother would not listen in.
That is part of the reason.
What else?
In case you said no to me asking you out,
You cried.
I cried. I had some time to emotionally gather myself before a crowd would see me, because that was my brother's graduation. So my grandma from Colorado was in town. I mean, we had all kinds of family there, and there was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You know. So thanks for saying yes to the first date.
You're welcome. That was a great first date.
But remember, when we called back then, the phones were corded. I mean, attached to the phone.
Right.
With a cord.
Right.
Not recorded, corded.
Corded.
And if you didn't get the person on the other end and they weren't home, what would you have to do?
Well, if they had an answering machine.
We did not.
You could leave a message, but if not, you just had to try back again.
Keep dialing.
Just
dialing. Yeah. Dial. Man, technology has come a long ways.
For better or for worse, it has changed. There are parts I actually do enjoy a lot of the technology, so I have kind of a favorable view. There are some things that every now and then I wish we could go back, but I actually enjoy technology and the conveniences that it brings.
Yeah. Well, back then we were late teens, early 20s, so we probably couldn't be doing this, but just think if we would have done a podcast on parenting in the digital age in the late 80s. What that would have looked like.
It would be talking about how to limit Atari use and television and TV.
Well, it would be like, hey, don't give your kids the remote control. Make them get up and turn the TV with their fingers, right? Push the buttons. Yeah. So we're gonna deal with a few more digital age issues.
Yeah, because a lot of our kids now have phones in their back pockets. There's no cord. There is voicemail. There is so much more. Who could have ever dreamed? I mean, 35 years ago, we couldn't dream at what we can carry around in our back pockets.
Yeah. Is it all back pockets, or do some people put in their front pocket? Isn't it kind of cool? I put it in my front pocket sometimes.
Yeah, but I think we're not supposed to do that anymore, like EMFs and stuff.
So the front pocket is bad and the back pocket's okay?
That's not what this podcast is about. If you want to learn more about that, go somewhere else.
Would that be like getting on some website or something like that?
Probably.
Yeah, okay, all right.
We are going to talk about, though, as parents, how to help our children navigate this digital age, and really how to help parents navigate this digital age. Because for a lot of people, there is a lot of fear wrapped up in this. And really, I mean, a healthy fear is probably good. There's a lot of evil that is walking around in that device. But also we're hoping that as parents leave, finish listening to this or watching this, if you're watching on YouTube, that you have a plan and that they're not walking away with fear, because God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a self-control, self-discipline, or sound mind.
No, it's for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power of love, but of power and of love and of a sound mind.
Look at this.
We eventually got it. Between the two of us, we did get it.
Yeah, it's written right here. I thought I had it memorized and I froze, but
2 Timothy.
Yeah, 1:7.
1:7.
Yeah. So there is a set of books that have actually just one book that has sat on my nightstand for the past 26 years. This author I'm going to tell you about in just a minute has written several books on prayer. And someone gifted me the book when I was pregnant with our first. It's Jody Byrne's book, Praying the Scriptures for Your Children. I've never met her in person, but I feel like she's my mentor. But she is the one who taught me how to pray God's word and insert my kid's name into them and go to battle for my kids in prayer. And so she has Praying the Scriptures for Your Children, for your teens, for your adult children. So one or all of her books have sat on my nightstand. I'll just pick them up and pray through them.
So Jody, if you are listening to this podcast, please reach out. Please, thank you, but please reach out to us, and we want to arrange a time to get together with us.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That'd be awesome.
Would love that. But I also get her blogs, and she wrote a blog that I thought was really good on this topic, and I just like the way she approached it. Of course, it's always in prayer, and I love that that's what she has taught me to do, is always go to the Lord first in prayer. Other mentors have done that too, but she's taught me how to do that. But she talks about in the book of Nehemiah, when Nehemiah, he was one of the Israelites who went back after years in captivity, went back to Jerusalem and helped to rebuild the wall. He faced a lot of threats that were trying to prevent him from rebuilding the wall. We have a lot of threats coming into our home through the digital, which is what we're going to address today. There's a lot of things, but we're just going to address the digital. And Nehemiah and his fellow Jews worked to rebuild Jerusalem. Their enemies kept barraging them, but he had a plan. And 1 was prayer. 2, he posted a guard. And 3, he made a plan to fight back. And so we can do the same thing as we are trying to protect our children and guide them in good digital use, digital phone use.
So let's dig into pray first. Let's look at that first. Even though it was listed third, let's make that our first.
Yeah. So Nehemiah 4:14 says, "Do not be afraid." And says Nehemiah was telling the Israelites, "Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes." And so he's exhorting us to fight. In 2 Corinthians 10:4 and 5, Paul tells us how we fight. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ.
So spiritual warfare, and there is war for our children that's happening out there, is waged with prayer, with faith, with truth, and obedience.
Yeah.
So we're gonna dig into that a little bit here.
Yeah.
To start off with.
Because I want parents to hear that that's our first line of defense, especially when we get fearful about technology and our kids interacting with it.
So let's talk about some different types of prayers.
Yeah. First of all,
let's talk about defensive prayers.
Defensive prayers. Job 1:10 says, "You've always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property. You have made him prosper in everything he does. Look how rich he is." And that's where I take prayers like this and I put our kids' names into it. You've always put a wall of protection around, and I'll just name all of our kids and grandkids and, in-law children. You have made, and our children prosper in everything they do. Look how rich they are. That's how I pray over them. Those are my defensive prayers. We can ask God to guard what they see. The eye is the lamp of the body, and we know there are all sorts of things that our kids can see on screens that can defile them. Matthew 6:22 through 23 says the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? And so I will pray that scripture over our kids asking the Lord to help make their eyes healthy, that what enters through their eyes would be light only and not darkness. And then trusting God to protect our kids with his righteousness and to deliver them from loneliness, from trouble, from shame. Psalm 25, 16 through 21 says, "Turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted." And I could put our kids, sometimes I see our kids go through seasons of loneliness, through seasons, maybe someone's bullying them or they're having a hard time at school. So I'll put in the name of the child who's doing that. The troubles of, the Psalm says of my heart, but again, I'll plug in my kids' names. The troubles of their heart, Lord, are enlarged. Bring me out of my distresses. Consider my affliction and my trouble and forgive all my sins. Consider how many are my foes and with what violent hatred they hate me. O guard my soul and deliver me. Let me not be put to shame, for I take refuge in you. May integrity and uprightness preserve me, for I wait for you. And whether there is a specific enemy, bully, someone at school that our children are having problems with, or just the enemy of our soul, because I know they do have an enemy.
Yeah, so that's the defensive side. We talked there about protection, talked about guarding, opening the door to darkness or light. So that's the defensive side. Let's talk about the offensive side, offensive prayers. One would be, don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. So really just breathing life into those around you, breathing life into your kids, making sure they know that you appreciate them, their uniqueness, how they were made. Yeah, we all have issues. We all have things that are not going well, that we're not perfect at. And many times we can ourselves focus on those, and then with our kids, we can get very focused on what they're not doing well. But breathe life into them. Also pray big picture prayers, asking God to help our kids think about whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is admirable, whatever is excellent and praiseworthy. Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. So just praying that over them on a consistent basis.
Yeah. And then prayers for us too. So we're praying for them. We're praying defensive and offensive prayers for them, but that just prayers for me. I need peace. When that fear does start to creep in, Isaiah 26:3 is a good one. You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. I can't remember which one in Philippians, it's chapter 4, but about do not be anxious about anything, but in everything with prayer and petition. With thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. I pray that for me a lot as a mom of a lot of kids. All right, so we wanted to mention that first, prayer, because that is the most important. The second one that we want to talk about, we'll probably spend more time on number 2 and 3, but number 2 is post a guard. And there's 2 different guards.
Time in this podcast.
Yes.
Parents need to spend more time
in prayer. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, so we're going to spend more time on this podcast on these, but as parents, time in prayer is more important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But number 2 is to post a guard. And we're going to talk about 2 different guards that we can post. One is our child's own heart, which we'll talk about that. There's a lot to that. And the second are the things that we only have iPhones, so I can't speak to the Android, but I know a lot of the parental controls and filters and stuff like that is out there. But digging into our child's heart, it can be the best filter. It is not always the best filter, but it can be the best filter, the best guard for them. But we have to be really intentional. And so I hope parents with young kids that are listening will take this to heart and start very early in working on their child's heart. But it's not too late, even if your child's older, and we'll talk about that.
Because what is lacking in character before turning the device over to the child in your family will surely be lacking afterwards, and probably will be amplified.
Yeah.
More than likely.
Yeah, they really will. Life in the Middle Years, what chapter is that? Is it chapter 11? Talks about parenting in the digital age. Yeah, chapter 11.
And all of these reference books will be in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll have some resources in the show notes that you can go to for additional.
Right. That would be one of these resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Reading the book, getting into a class. But a quote out of there, many of the challenges parents face in the era of cyber parenting are not digital in nature, but something closer to home. They're basic parenting challenges that now have a digital look. If there's any character weakness flagged, it will not be because of a digital device caused it. Rather, the device only revealed it. Ouch. Mm-hmm. So if your child had problems with time management before they got a phone, it's going to be amplified after they got a phone. If they had problems speaking life or speaking death, unfortunately, before they got the phone, it's going to be amplified after it, which is why just focusing on their heart and working on those character things. And we're going to get to that more in the end here too. But the heart needs to be the best guard, because we can't follow them around everywhere. Yeah. We can set up guidelines, we can send help, we can set up some helps, and we will talk about those as well. But one day they're going to leave our home. They're going to go to college. They're going to get a job. And we're not going to be following them around, making sure they're doing wise things on their phone. Yeah.
Well, the digital age didn't create a whole new set of parenting challenges. They're the same challenges that parents have had for years. All it did was amplify them. And now they have tools to look at them and transfer them. It really just made them transferable, seeable, visual more. Yeah.
Brought it to our attention. We may have been able to look the other way a little bit easier, and then they get the phone and we see these things. They're like, oh my goodness.
Right.
Now I know what I have to work on.
Yeah.
I'd like to read another section from Life in the Middle Years. If you're hoping to protect your children from threats lurking in the unseen corners of the digital world, the place to begin is at home and by reinforcing the otherness values of the heart. The child who is conversant with speaking life will speak life on social media. If your preteen is responsible with time, that too will carry over. If your son or daughter possesses the self-control not to visit places unknown, that same quality will serve as a protector in your son or daughter's digital world. Parents so often pray that God will protect their children. This part I like. Well, one way he does that is through the abiding presence of his virtues in their lives. The presence of virtue is the result of mom and dad's intentional training. Where there is godly virtue, there is wisdom. And in wisdom, there is godly protection. The conclusion is, as Proverbs 22 implies, when the child's heart is wise, the parent's heart is glad. I thought there was so much in that. Our training results in virtue in our children. That godly virtue leads to wisdom. And in that wisdom, leads to godly protection. So it all starts with us training them.
Yeah, and we have a lot to steward when we're parenting. We have homes and things in those homes. We have finances. We have decisions that need to be made with our adult selves, work, and we have our kids. So we have a lot going on that we're stewarding. And if we want our kids to turn out differently than the culture, we have to parent differently than the culture. You have to take your job seriously as a parent and really lean into it and spend the time, the energy, and do things differently, because you're not going to get the same result by just consistently doing the same thing everyone else is doing.
Right. And the good news is God loves our kids more than we do, and he wants this virtue in them even more than we do, which is hard to believe. When I came to that realization, it was like, oh, wow, I don't have to do this totally alone. And I mean, I have you, so I never was totally alone. But still, just the weight, that pressure of feeling like I have to get this right. And while there should be some urgency that we as parents feel to, like, if there isn't an urgency, you can always say, I'll do it later. But also just, I think it's that peace, knowing that God is there. He will equip me. He wants to protect them too. Keep leaning into him, keep asking him for help, and he'll give it, which has been great. And he's been faithful in our lives. And looking at our children, our oldest is 26, our youngest is 11. Has everything been perfect? No, not by any means. Have things come in sometimes that we wish didn't? Yeah.
So if our kids are listening to this, we have no perfect children. So is that fair to say? Okay, good.
They're pretty good though.
They're pretty good, but no perfect. So we've got leaning into our kids' hearts And a lot of that is just time and filtering what God is doing in and through them. The second one is parental controls.
Yeah.
Let's spend a few minutes on that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
So we are going to spend a few minutes, but maybe not the way they think. We're not going to give specific filters, programs, anything, because I can't keep up with them.
Right.
You can't keep up with them.
We'd have to podcast every month, every week.
Well, and there's people who do a really good job with
and this isn't a technology podcast.
No, this is not. I enjoy it, but I am not an expert on it. And the crazy thing is, if your child, well, first of all, we were just talking about how we did not grow up with technology. So everything we have learned has been a lot later in life. Our kids have grown up with this. They are really fluent in this whole technological language. It does not faze them or scare them to pick up a device and start fiddling with it and try to figure them out. We pick it up, we're like, give us the instruction manual. I'm afraid I'm going to break it and I won't be able to figure out what I did.
I'm still working through, do I keep instruction manuals for things or don't I?
No, they're all online.
But if your Wi-Fi's out,
there you go.
You got the instruction manual.
Showing our age,
so
that's for sure.
Well, yeah, we're Rich and Julie Young, and we are not, that young anymore.
20,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I say that our kids are very fluent in this language. They can figure stuff out.
It's true.
Now, we may be speaking, there may be some moms and dads on here who this is their job. And so they're like, no, I got it. But you are the exception to most parents. But if you have a child who's sneaky enough and wants to get around a parental control,
or smart enough,
a filter, sneaky and smart,
right,
they will get around it.
Right.
I've seen and read too many things, different crazy apps, and there are adults like making apps and things to help kids get around it. In fact, so the iPhones have parental controls, and we do use those to some extent on some of our kids' devices. And I thought, there's a special passcode. Well, I forgot that special passcode. I did find out you can't get it back. But I also thought, let me just try something. If I was a kid, and
if you wrote that
around
passcode down on a piece of paper, you wouldn't forget it.
You should. The kid would find it. But I Googled how to get around parental controls. And of course, there was a video that someone had put out. It had hundreds of thousands of views. So I watched it. There's completely a way to get around parental controls.
Did you figure out how to get in then?
I did.
Okay,
I did.
good.
Yeah, it was connected to my app line. Yeah, I finally figured it out. There are ways. Apple knows the parents don't necessarily keep
track of it. Yeah, exactly.
All that to say, parental controls filters, they have a place. If you have a sneaky enough child who you're working on their heart, but they're just not where you want them to be yet, it will slow them down. I mean, there may be some protections because there are things on the internet searching for your child. Your child may not even be looking for anything evil, but stuff will pop up. And so there are protections that we can put on our children's devices to protect them from that. And we encourage you to use those. The thing that I want parents...
And we're going to talk about boundaries in a minute.
Yeah.
Parental controls. We're talking more about filters, things on the device themselves.
Right.
Okay.
Programs, apps.
Right. Apps.
I'm not even sure all that is out there.
We'll just stop there. That sounds good.
I just don't want parents to rely too much on those.
Right.
And say, I have this filter, these protections, and this passcode, and then not worry about what their kid's doing on their device, not worry about their heart, not teaching them some of the things, our younger children who are naive and don't understand that the evil is out there trying to find them.
Well, and that might speak to parents too, like, where's your heart?
Yeah.
As a parent, where's your heart around this issue? Are you so into technology and not spending time face-to-face with your family or your kids that you're demonstrating that the technology is more important than the relational side of your family? So I think we as parents have to really look at what are we demonstrating through our actions.
Oh, that's the hard part. Did you have to bring that up? Can it all be?
Well, I was just thinking about someone just a few hours ago, I was eating at the table and I was looking up something. I thought that was really important, but we had talked about maybe not having phones while we were eating.
Oh, yeah.
And someone called me out on that. So I was just like, that was a therapy session for me.
Good job.
In that I just went through that a few hours ago, and whoever called me out was exactly right.
Yeah.
But it was a really good article. It was I mean, I could teach on that.
Yeah.
I could teach on that article. That's how I rationalize it. Oh my, crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I shouldn't say we've all been there, but I know I've been there, you've been there. So we have been just on our phones and kind of oblivious to stuff going around us. It's a real temptation. It's something I think probably every parent battles to some extent, not carrying the phone around from room to room and leaving it and not answering things right away. It's hard.
Right.
It's hard.
Yeah. So you've got prayer, really, really important, posting a guard. And now let's talk about making a plan.
Yeah.
Let's talk about making a plan.
Let's talk about some practical things, how we can teach their heart and things that we can do to protect them. And not just to protect them, but to teach them how to use these devices in a productive way, how it can be how they can be life-giving.
So most parents are probably thinking, wanting to know, we can do this right now for them, what age should my kid be allowed to have a phone? And I'm going to turn that over to you, Julie, because you've talked about this a lot. What age should they allow their kids to have a phone?
I won't give an age. Sorry. All I can say is later is better.
Yes, with an exclamation point.
Later is better. There is just so much that goes into giving our child a phone. There's just so much. And so I would say later is better.
And that comes with maturity.
It comes with maturity. It comes with earning the freedom, demonstrating some heart values, self-control. We're going to get into a bunch of things that we have to see in our kids. And it's funny, there is an age, and we're not going to say it, but there is an age in our family where they will get their first phone. But if you ask any of our kids, and they have been asked this by other adults, what age do your parents let you have a phone? And they'll say the age, and they always follow it up with, but we have to show that we're responsible and have earned it, can handle the freedom. I think that's how they say.
Well, I think the pressure comes like your kids don't have a phone. Your kids' friends all get phones. You haven't allowed them to have a phone. There's some pressure there, right? I mean, that can be
especially
tough.
If you didn't know, and one Christmas, all your kids get a phone, and like your kid was totally fine with it, and then, they go to that first day of school in January and come home and go, I need a phone now.
That's where you hope. That's where you hope their birthday's the first week of January.
Well, if they're ready for one.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, totally joking.
Yeah, but it's funny going back.
But our two youngest have their birthdays in January. That's what I was thinking.
But that's where I was going back to, though, that our kids, they know the age at that birthday where they will most likely get a phone unless they have not demonstrated good responsibility in a lot of different areas in their lives. And we're not looking for them to be perfect. That's too much pressure on a child to think I have to be perfect by this birthday. Characterized, demonstrating, teachable, responsible with a lot of things, life-giving with their words. Again, we'll get into that more. But that whole year, probably actually the 3 or 4 months prior to that birthday, they're pretty dialed in to being like, do I need to take the trash out? I need to get it out now. Like they know to be responsible. And one of our children, it was coming up, and they did something that was not very responsible. They were not characterized by this, but it was just something that they had done. And this child told one of their siblings, there's no way I'm getting a phone. I just messed up bad. So we had to talk to him and say, it takes more than just one thing. We're looking at what you're characterized by. And we had to assure that child, you're doing a good job. You have not messed everything up. Because I think they were pretty terrified that they were going to be the first of all the siblings not to get the phone at that age.
Yep. And what do some parents say? Get it for their protection?
Yeah.
I mean, is that always a reason to get it for them?
Tricky thing. No. And every family situation is different.
Correct.
But we just ask you to really evaluate. You're giving, even if they're earning it, but they are getting a device that is not very protective in a lot of ways. There's a lot of evil that can find them. So to say I'm giving my child a phone for their protection is really shaky ground. So you just need to evaluate what is that protection and what are you giving up? What protection will they lose by them having a phone?
Having a phone is not going to help them plan ahead. Having a phone is not going to help them think better. Having a phone is not going to help them problem solve better. They've got to be able to plan ahead, think, problem solve on their own. The phone may be a tool that can help them, but if they can't do those things on their own, that's the real protection. If you train them on those things, planning ahead, thinking, and how to problem solve, you're going to give them the tools to protect themselves in most scenarios. But the phone, the device, can be an added tool to those.
Right. So. Right. Yeah. I was talking to someone whose children did not get phones until late in their high school years. And they were just talking about, they had a sports practice. It got rained out. Everyone was calling their parents to come get them. And their kids had to problem solve and think, how am I going to get a hold of mom? Tell her where we're at, work out a meeting place. And so they had to do a little bit more problem solving than just automatically picking up the phone. And this parent was glad. I was glad my child had that exercise and thinking it through. And I'm just.
Did they get home?
They did.
They got home.
Safely. They were fine. But I even think back to when we were growing up. There was a lot of planning ahead. I'll meet you here at this time, and we actually had to do that with our parents, which you don't have to do as much right now because our kids have a device. And I'll tell you, as a parent, it can be nice to know. In fact, there was one time, so our kids that have phones, we homeschool, and they've learned that if they have their phone in their room with them or next to them when they're doing school, it's a big temptation.
Yeah. So
a lot of them will leave it in the kitchen and the laundry room, just in a completely separate room in the house while they're doing school. And usually that isn't a rule that we made, and we'll talk about that in a minute, about rules and boundaries with phones. But it was kind of something a lot of our kids realized when their work wasn't getting done, and oops, I just spent an hour on YouTube or whatever it was. But I remember I was gone for the day, and I was trying to call home to one of the children. It wasn't an emergency. I was probably at the grocery and wanted to know if we needed apples or something. And they didn't pick up. And I was like frustrated. I'm like, we gave you a phone so I could reach you, and you're not even picking up. And so I was a little perturbed when I got home. And I was like, why didn't you pick up? I was calling you. And they said, I was getting too distracted with my phone, so I put it in the other room. And I kind of looked at them like, that's so wise. But there's this can be an expectation of a parent, like, you have that phone, so I can contact you at any time. I can know where you're at any time, which is not an encouraging message to be sending kids, that you need to be at my beck and call at any time. I need to know where you are at every single second. So we have to be careful at these subtle messages that we're sending our kids. And I actually complimented this child and said,
that gets into really examining the use as an adult, as a parent. How are you using your phone? What are your expectations? How do you have a rhythm going? And we've talked about that before. And I think that's something that we all need to examine on a regular basis, because we can go down the slippery slope. Before we go on, though, did you buy the apples or not?
Probably.
You just got an extra amount.
They would get eaten.
Yeah, they would get eaten. That makes sense. That's probably wise.
That's funny that you needed to know that.
Well, hey, maybe I didn't need to know that, but someone out there is listening to this, and they were going,
if it was apples.
They were wondering, did she buy the apples? And now they can listen to the rest of the podcast because they know.
Yes.
So
very good.
You're welcome, whoever that is out there. Yes.
Thank you.
So then let's talk about some boundaries.
So
we talked about, when do they get it? We've talked about parents need to examine their own use of technology, and we're not going to go through what parents should or should not do. I really think that's something that you need to lean into and figure out, or have a spouse or a friend tell you how you're using technology and whether it's healthy or not. So let's talk a little bit about boundaries.
So we have boundaries with our kids, with their phones. We don't have any rules, except for one. They have to charge it in the laundry room at night. They can't have it in their room.
Not at their bed.
Yeah. Not at their bed. Yeah. And they will, what's the number one reason they think they need it on their nightstand at night? For the alarm.
That's right.
But you know what? Walmart has like $8 alarm clocks. So we bought all the kids $8 alarm clocks so that they can't use that phone as an excuse.
I bet you can find them cheaper than that.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, probably. But it's really interesting. One of our children shared with us, they were surprised. They were in high school hanging out with a bunch of friends. And they were surprised because some of the kids started talking about all the different rules that their families had for cell phones. And our child was like, wow, Mom and Dad have never talked about rules. We don't have rules for our cell phones, and their kids were shocked. Now we're going to get into this a little bit more. Don't freak out and say, rules are all out the door. No, there's a lot of caveats to that. But what one of our kids noticed was that her friends, some of them were trying to get around the rules. It was kind of like, there's a rule. How can I get around it? Which, maybe showed a little bit on their heart. But
working the rule.
When it's the rule guiding them and not the principles you've put into their heart, there is more of a, I can break that rule, I can bend that rule, which we want to be careful of. I'm going to quote again from the middle years. The governing principle is this: boundaries give way to freedoms in accordance with a child's intellectual and emotional ability to handle those freedoms. When it comes to the digital phase of parenting, the initial question has to do with readiness. Is my child ready to handle the responsibility that comes with a phone and immediate access to a world of unlimited and unfiltered knowledge? Your child's digital world requires a manageable level of self-control, civility, manners, moral sensitivity, kindness, life-giving character, and all the self-confidence and close family identity that is required to successfully battle peer pressure. There was a whole bunch of things listed in there. We're going to break some of them down, but really important as we think about our kids with phones.
Yeah. So if their heart is the best guard, then we've got, most of the time should be spent working on their heart. And in order to do that, we have to examine our own heart.
Yeah.
What is our attitude as a parent? What's our posture towards our child's technology use? Do we believe that they are going to do a great job handling this new freedom? Or do we believe that we're just waiting for them to make a mistake?
Right. So many parents give their kids a phone almost like with their arms crossed, kind of look like, here you go. Go ahead. Just mess up. I'm just waiting for you.
Ready to say, I told you so.
Yeah. Instead of, hey, when we give our kids a phone, we say, I've really watched how you've been responsible. You've been doing a good job. You've been characterized by getting your chores done and speaking kind words. I'm really proud of you. I think you're ready to handle the freedoms that come with having a phone. We're going to work with you. I know there's going to be a lot of temptations and things you're going to want to do. But, your dad and I are just really proud of you, and we want to champion you. We want to help you.
Yeah. And really our role is just to guide them through this process like we are doing everything else. We're in partnership with them. Mm-hmm. They're in partnership with us, and we're going to guide them through this process of learning how to use this tool.
Yeah. And it's just so much more exciting for kids to know, like, mom and dad think I'm going to do a good job. Like, they want to live up to the expectation.
Right.
If we give it to them kind of like, you're going to mess up. I know you will. You mess up on everything. It's like, oh, that's the expectation? Okay, I'll meet your expectation there too.
Let's talk about a few problems.
Yeah.
And maybe some ways to work through those. So first one, time management.
Yeah. So we kind of identified 6, it seems like the 6 biggest problems or complaints that we hear, and actually kind of for me too, to be honest. So this is with kids. Time management. Yeah. The child who struggles with time management before downloading social media app, a game app, whatever, will not afterwards suddenly become a good steward of time.
It will get worse.
It will get worse. Yeah.
Right.
So what's the solution? Teach them self-control, which hopefully you've been doing since they were in the high chair and we made them sign please before they could get more food. Maybe not. Maybe you're starting later on this, but self-control is still a virtue, a character trait that will carry our children in so many areas of life, not just their phone use, but a huge area. And it can start, if you have a little one, if they're going to play, there's so many educational games, which be careful of those too. But there's so many educational games on, iPads, phones, whatever. Caution you not to just set your toddler on the couch with the phone and say, set up the phone, but have them start off on your lap. Hold them on your lap and teach them how to use it. Sometimes there's so many buttons, they want to press them all and it's so pretty. And then they learn really early how to get out of that, how to start taking pictures, how to do so many things on the phone. So you're guiding their hands. So when their little hands start to do something we don't want them to do, it's just no, we do this. And so that's where it can start.
Well, and also just having them ask permission to use it.
Yes.
They just don't get free reign.
Mm-hmm.
So permission to use it. Do they have the freedom? Do they have other things done that they need to have done first to earn the privilege of spending some time on the screen? Have you set a certain amount of time per day that you allow on screen so it doesn't get out of control?
Right.
If you don't do that, it can turn into a lot.
Hours
pretty
and hours.
quick.
Sure. I have that problem. I have to set timers for me. When our kids are young and, they ask for, can I have some screen time? There's timer apps within the device. The children know how to use them if they don't teach them for the first time how to set a timer. And so we'll tell our kids, you can have 20 minutes playing games on the iPad. Make sure you set the timer and we'll watch them do it. They have to do it in the room, a public room in the house. So again, we don't call these rules. We just call them boundaries of what we do. And they know that. They know how much time they have.
Yeah.
And if they consistently abuse that or trying to get around that, they might lose the privilege of having that device for a little while until they can prove that they can show responsibility with our boundaries with the device.
Another problem is they aren't speaking life-giving words. They're speaking death. So if they're struggling with that, there's a good chance that they're going to struggle with even more once they get a phone. So you as a parent and your parent to child relationship, you need to work on speaking life.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what that concept is.
I think it's episode 2 of the podcast. We addressed it pretty early
There's
on.
that, but there's also the series Parenting from the Tree of Life. And that's early on in that book too. It's lesson 2, lesson 3?
I think it's lesson 1.
Is it lesson 1?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, our words can't be undone. It's the old thing of trying to once you squeeze toothpaste out of a tube, can you put the toothpaste back in the tube? I mean, it's a mess trying to do that. You might be able to get some back in. It's really challenging, though, to expand that toothpaste tube and shove it back in. That's the same thing that happens with us. When we speak death words, we are getting them out there, and they're really hard to take back and really hard to clean up after we do.
Yeah. So we teach our kids anything that you post on social media, anything that you comment on, words that you comment, make sure it's life-giving and think through, examine your heart. Why are you posting this? Would this bring glory to God? Are you trying to show off? Are you trying to puff yourself up? Are you trying to make someone else feel bad by posting this? We kind of run through these questions in their mind.
Right.
And even some of our kids have said, I don't even want social media. But, thinking through, if you went to something, is someone else going to feel bad? Are you tagging people? I mean, all the things, depending on where the maturity of your child is in their friend group, I recommend pushing social media off till way later.
Yeah, let's talk about another one, time and place.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Are we done with that one?
Yeah. Are you good? Did you have more to say?
Well, I just wanted, getting the phone does not mean you get social media.
That's when you've been married for 32 years.
I wasn't done.
And you realize as a husband, when you say you're ready to move on and she's not done, that can be a response that comes back to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for being sensitive to what
Absolutely.
I was thinking. Yeah. But I just wanted to make the point that just because they get the phone does not mean they get social media right away. Our kids wait for quite a while. Okay. Time and place. Go for it, babe.
No, go for it. I was throwing that one to you. I just didn't throw it at the right time.
Well, the third problem we see a lot is using the phone at the wrong time in the wrong place. And again, this is where a lot of people have rules. Don't use it in the car when you're riding with someone. Don't have it at the dinner table. And agree, but I would go back to the principle, because if you have a list of rules or places that your kids aren't allowed to use the phone, then they're going to memorize all those places. And if you're not at one of those places, the rule doesn't apply. But that's really not what we're after. What we're after is teaching them the right time and the right place to use it. They need to be aware of the preciousness of others that they're around. Conversation and relationship eye to eye with people around you is really important. And so put the phone down. And so we actually don't have a no phone at the dinner table rule at our house. Now, no one is on their phone at dinner, scrolling, answering texts, answering phone calls, checking social media, anything like that, because we've taught them the principle of preciousness of others. However, we do allow the phones at the table Because of why? You want to share that?
Well, if we're going through a discussion about something and there is a piece of content that we're trying to remember, a fact, I think it was around D-Day or something like that we were looking up, we're not going to be able to remember it sometimes without looking up some website that would have that specific piece of information. So it does come in handy every now and then when we're having a family discussion over a topic.
Yeah, because sometimes our family dinners can go on and we're discussing things that our kids say to us because we're like, I can't remember. So again, if we had a rule of no cell phones at the table, as soon as our kids whipped out the phone to look up this thing that's driving us crazy, they would have broken the rule. But if our principle is the preciousness of others, paying attention to the people around us, pulling out the phone to look something up that is driving you and I crazy because we can't remember it is actually helping us.
Right.
And they're not violating any rule. So anytime you can go back to the principle and instill the principles in your children's heart, that's going to go way farther than any rule is ever going to go, because there will be some new situation that you didn't think up a rule to, and they're going to think it doesn't apply.
Yeah, rules are specific to a situation, and situations change all the time.
All the time, yeah.
So the fourth problem is seeing unwanted or inappropriate content. And you've got two categories here that you're dealing with: content that finds them and content that they seek out. So if they are seeking out inappropriate content, that's where you need to be having a discussion with them all the time. What's new that they've found on their devices? What types of things are they into? What types of things are they spending time on? If I looked at your phone and saw the apps that you had open, the topics that you were looking at, if I looked at your time screen once a week, what would I be seeing if we sat down together and went through that? And that is a conversation you need to have on a regular basis, because once you see something, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Once it's seen, it's there.
Yeah. And I've asked our kids that question. I said, have you ever seen something that you wish you didn't? And it can be the scary billboard for the haunted house on the way to church every morning. And they're like, oh, yeah. So our kids get that. They have seen images that they wish they hadn't seen. So they understand that. So yeah, we have conversations about that. We talk about pursuing purity, which is so much more than what it's often meant to portray. But it's really a seeking what is true, noble, and right, pure, lovely, and admirable type of conversation, and just how that makes us feel, and seeking and glorifying the Lord. Those are bigger conversations that should have a bigger context in our whole parenting, not just having to do with the phone, but it definitely applies there.
A lot of people think that the mentality is that their thoughts are private as long as they don't say anything or do anything wrong, like outwardly. It's all right to think it. Well, this mentality is pretty bad, because our thoughts can affect so much of our physical actions that keeping our thoughts internal in the short term might not lead to anything, but it will lead to physical actions at some point. It will drive us to those physical actions. So what we're watching, what we're listening to, how much we're surfing on social media or the web, that thought life is going to affect our action life at some point. Sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes it's over a period of time. So if we're focusing on using the tool as a way to enhance relationships, as a way to bring God into more conversations, I think, that can be a powerful way to use technology.
Yeah. The other thing I thought of, so there's times where our kids will seek out inappropriate content, but it also will seek them out. We've mentioned that. And teaching our kids to look away as quick as possible, look away. And I know you've done a really good job with the kids. You guys like to watch all sorts of sporting events together, and sometimes things. And
gardening and other things like that too.
There's gardening shows you watch?
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Is there inappropriate content that pops up?
Not often.
So much.
Not often.
It's more the Super Bowl commercials.
That's fair. That's true.
But you've taught the kids to have kind of that safe channel on the TV that, let's just go to Didn't they have like dog shows or the Weather Channel or something?
We watched the American Cornhole Championship or something like that. That's pretty safe,
But it's just kind of teaching them, when stuff like this comes up, just look away.
Or the Weather Channel. The Weather Channel is usually a safe bet. That speaks to our technology, though, too, right? On the 8s, that doesn't happen anymore. We can get into that whole thing.
That's when we had to get the radar at 8 after the hour.
On the 8s.
Oh, 8, yeah. Now we get in our phones.
That's right.
We're really dating ourselves.
Let's go to number 5. Yeah, posting. Posting inappropriate content.
Yeah. And actually, I think I kind of referenced this. I went a little bit out of order. We talked about social media. See, that's why you were moving me along. You thought I got ahead of myself.
Yeah, but you're really good. You were just putting 2 into 1.
There you go.
You're so good.
Yeah.
You're so good.
1 Thessalonians 5:11 talks about encourage one another and build each other up. We'll use that verse a lot. We'll talk about that the Lord wants us to encourage one another and build each other up. Is that what your social media post is doing? Is that what your comment is doing? Social media can have, it's not all bad. It can bring glory to God. It can encourage others. There's so much good in it. And so when our kids have this desire to be on it, I'm fine with them. And we talk about, that's great. You can really use this for good. And I've seen them do it, which is really fun.
Yeah. And one way, and just a couple of thoughts on that too. One way might be to have your kids run posts by you before they post them.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to get into their world and just to make sure that they're posting in a way that's life-giving.
Yeah.
And the other way is just be their friend. You can see when they are posting. So you may not be in a situation where you can, or you will have them run every post by you, but you can just, and there was a time recently, I know, where there was a post done and you kind of coached one of our kids on maybe to adjust it, change it. You might even take it off and post something different.
Yeah.
Just because it wasn't terrible what was posted, but it was not in a light,
we knew
positive
there was one
light.
person, it might hurt their feelings.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
I remember
and so
that.
I kind of brought up and I mentioned this one person. I said, how do you think this one person's going to feel about you posting that? And our daughter hadn't thought of that one person. And it really wasn't a bad post.
It wasn't a bad post. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember the whole conversation.
It was pretty life-giving, but I just knew that it was going to make one person feel bad. And I mentioned that to our daughter and she's like, oh, I never even thought about that. And so she quickly agreed. And again, when our kids have teachable hearts, I didn't come down hard on her. It was just, hey, have you considered this? Have you thought about this? Because again, we're trying to teach them to think. Our goal is coach. When they're in their teen years, we're coaching them. We want them to take on responsibility on their own. When they're in college, when they're grown, they're not going to be calling me going, Mom, can you check my Instagram post or whatever? And again, if they want to be sneaky, I know there are sneaky kids who have private accounts that their parents know nothing about. So, we know there's a way to work around anything, which is why we say, work on their heart, establish your relationship with them, this trusting mutual relationship, encourage them. When they do well, when they post good stuff, cheerlead them. If it embarrasses them to have you be the one commenting all the time, just do it privately to them and say, hey, I saw your post. That was really neat. Loved the way you blah, blah, blah. And again, just continue. Let them know you're cheerleading them. You want them to succeed. Yeah. I think so many parents are just waiting for their kids to mess up and pounce on them. And the kids feel that. That's not life-giving to the kids. It's just so discouraging as a kid to think that you have parents that are just waiting for you to mess up and expect you to mess up.
Right. Yeah. So we went through 5 problems: time management, life-giving words, time and place, seeing inappropriate content, posting inappropriate content. Last one we want to cover on the problem side is predators.
Yeah.
Spend a little bit of time here.
Yeah. Our kids need to understand, especially when they're really young, that anything they do online leaves cookie crumbs right back to who they are, where they are, where they live, their screen, in ways that they don't even understand. I don't even understand all the ways that can happen. But, let them know, keep all your private information private. Mm-hmm. They may sound like they're, a 14-year-old girl in another state who just wants to get to know you. And I've told our kids that's not always really a 14-year-old girl in another state.
It's very unlikely, it isn't.
Very unlikely. Yeah. So just be really, really careful. Sometimes they'll just get these random texts to their phone that say, hey, want to get coffee? And I even tell them if it's an unknown number, just don't even respond to it. they're tempted. Should I tell this person I think they have the wrong number? Or should I ask them their name because I don't recognize their number? And I'll maybe look at the number and see if I have it in my contacts. And when I don't, I'm like, nope, delete it. Just don't even respond to it. Because a lot of times those are unfortunately predators that are just kind of fishing, trying to see who they can get to reply to them and meet up with, or I don't even know what else.
Well, or just send them a note and put in front of their name, Officer Matt, or something like that. That might be a way to do it.
Yeah, no, just don't answer. Just don't answer.
That's why I let Julie answer that one. But also teach them who they are in Christ.
Yes.
That's going to protect them from a lot of predators. When someone's trying to shame them, remind them of who they are. Remind them that they are chosen, that they are a child of God, that they are created in his image, that they are a temple of the Holy Spirit. Yeah. I mean, you need to feed them constantly on who they are so they don't have any doubt who they are or desire to hear from someone else who they are other than you as parents and their relationship with the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope this has alleviated some fear. There are so many resources out there. Take one of the GFI classes that will help, and get on your knees and pray for your kids.
Yeah, and go write a note to your kids, put it in the mail, snail mail it, and have a written note showing up in the mail that they can open up that shows them how much you care about them and love them.
Love that.
All right.
Do that for your spouse too.
That's right. Good idea. I will.
Thank you for listening to the Life Parenting Podcast hosted by Growing Families. We hope you've been encouraged and strengthened in your role as a parent. In the show notes, you'll see links to the growingfamilies.life website, where you can find more information and resources, including videos, links to sign up for one of our online parenting classes, and information on how to connect with a contact mom. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. We'd love for you to consider subscribing so you get these episodes right when they come out. If you're enjoying the podcast, we'd love for you to give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice to help others find this resource. If you prefer the video format of the podcast, click subscribe to the Growing Families Life YouTube channel so that you'll see new episodes when they're posted. Thanks for listening.
Punching down to reach it.
How's that? Is that better?
Make sure it's...
You get comfy and bring the microphone to
you. Okay, I'm good.
We want a good blooper reel.
We got good.
Would that be good to be on bloopers?
No. So we'll be sure.
Yeah.